Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today I'm bringing you a video I've been meaning to make for a while, listing all the gear with actual bonuses that you can steal in Dragon Age Origins. This will include items you directly steal from NPCs using the stealing skill or in special dialogue options, and also items you can obtain by breaking and entering into a few places, as long as it is actually considered stealing in some way, in the sense that characters in the world comment on it or react to it. Before we get into the list, I'll take a moment to say a special thank you to my members. I appreciate all of you so much, and your support allows me to keep going. Joining as a member would help the channel a lot, but of course only do so if you want to and if you can afford it. I'm always grateful, even if you just like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment. Back to the video. I'll split this up into 3 sections as follows: gear stolen from NPCs, gear stolen from locations, and finally gear that isn't available to steal in the vanilla game despite being intended to, which can be restored on PC with mods for the most part. Unfortunately, if you're playing on consoles, the final section won't be available to you. Starting with gear you can obtain using the stealing skill, it's first important to understand how the stealing skill works. You can use it once on an NPC in an area to obtain either an item or money, or in some cases a combination of both. Stealing from most NPCs will grant you a bit of money, a consumable item, or a valuable item like a gem, or if you have the Stone Prisoner DLC, potentially also crystals for shale. A few higher rank NPCs will grant more money, unique gear items, and in some cases weapon runes. I'm only focusing on the actual wearable items in this video mostly, but I will get through a stealing only challenge run for DAO in the near future, so do be on the lookout for it if you're interested in learning more about how much you can accomplish with stealing. Anyway, back to the stealing skill, each target will require a certain amount of thieving score for you to succeed at the stealing attempt. There's also a random factor accounting for about 40% variability, but it's fine if you fail at a stealing attempt. You can just try again once the skill is off cooldown. What contributes to your thieving score is your cunning, then each rank of the stealing skill adds 5 points. Finally, if you have the stealth ability available and make sure to go into stealth before stealing, then each rank of stealth also adds 5 points to the attempt. So if you'd like to be able to easily steal the best items on this list, or maybe even try a stealing-only challenge run yourself, it's important to know the general thieving score you need to aim for at certain parts of the game. For that reason, I'm ordering the items you can steal from NPCs in more or less chronological order, or a reasonable order at least, because of course once you're done with Lothering, you can go anywhere you'd like as long as you can handle the combat. Starting with Ostagar, there are 2 special stolen items to note. Hardy's Belt is a belt that grants +1 Constitution. You can steal this one very easily from the Quartermaster in the Ostagar camp. The stealing attempt is always successful regardless of your cunning score or stealing skill level. You can also steal a valuable item from Duncan twice, once in the initial camp and then again when you return from the Korkari Wilds in the evening. I debated whether to include this or not because you won't get any gear per se, but stealing from Duncan can yield very high value items, so it's worth it. You'll either get high tier potions or salves, or else master tier hail, silverite, and cold iron runes, or flawless grade crystals for shale. Whether you want to use these items or not is up to you, but they will definitely sell for a pretty penny, allowing you to buy better gear earlier on. You need a thieving score of 38 to guarantee a success, with a minimum of 32 for a potential success. Duncan is a high rank NPC, meaning that you'll need to invest a lot into your stealing skill and cunning score from the get-go to be able to steal from him. DLC items such as the High Regard of House Dace Amulet, the Guildmaster's Belt, as well as stuff granting bonuses to all attributes will also help with this. In Lothering, there's just one special thing to steal. Imperium Crossbow is a tier 7 crossbow that grants increased damage versus demons on the PC version, or +2 damage and -1 dexterity on the console version of the game. You can steal it from the Unscrupulous Merchant in Lothering as long as you don't kill him during the cutscene when you meet him. This requires a thieving score of 20 to succeed. In the Brazilian Forest, you have one encounter during which you can steal 2 items, not with a stealing skill but rather as a dialogue option, but I still count it as stealing from an NPC. Dagon's Daltanu is a tier 4 war axe with +10% nature resistance and +4 attack, and Dagon's boots are tier 5 light boots with +2 constitution. You can steal these from Dagon in dialogue while he is unconscious, or if you kill him. Obviously, if you kill him, that wouldn't really be stealing anymore, but if he's just unconscious and you take him back to camp afterwards, I'd say this absolutely counts. Obviously, there's no thieving score required. You're literally stealing from someone who's unconscious due to severe injuries. The war axe isn't great, there's far better one-handed weapons you can get for free, but it is one of the very few weapons you can steal, so if you're planning on doing a stolen items only challenge, then it's better than nothing. The boots are pretty decent, since they essentially grant +10 health. You could definitely give these to a blood mage, or even just a lightly armored rogue or warrior to make them a bit tankier. During the Urn of Sacred Ashes, you can steal 1 item. Chevalier's Mace is a tier 3 mace that grants plus 5% cold resistance, minus 5% spirit resistance, and plus 2 cold damage, and can be stolen from Colgrim during the Urn of Sacred Ashes questline. You can steal this from him either during combat if you have a high enough rank of stealing to be able to use stealing in combat, or otherwise steal it while he's friendly to you if you agree to his plan, even if you intend on betraying him later. It requires a thieving score of 77 to steal, which is huge, and while you can also obtain a valuable item and 2 to 4 gold from this attempt, the mace isn't that amazing and you can get one from another source on this list anyway. Orzammar has a whole 3 gear items you can obtain by stealing from NPCs. Champion's Shield is a tier 6 Targe shield with plus 12 defense that you can steal from Vartag Gavorn, Prince Balin's second in Orzammar. It requires a thieving score of 35. You can steal this from Vartag when he's in the Chamber of the Assembly, the Royal Palace, or the Proving Grounds. In the base game, you can actually steal 3 copies of this shield, one from each area, but it doesn't make much sense that he has 3 of the exact same shield, so on PC, Quinn's Ultima Dio fixback makes it so that you can only steal 1 copy of this, reasonably so. Shaper's Amulet is an amulet that grants plus 2 willpower and can be stolen from Shaper Tsibor in the Orzammar Shaperate. It requires a thieving score of 55. Considering the fact that Orzammar is a high-level area, this makes sense, although the amulet itself isn't great since it effectively only gives you plus 10 stamina or mana and a tiny bit of mental resistance. Thorn of the Dead Gods is a tier 3 dagger that grants plus 2 damage and plus 2 armor penetration and which can be stolen from Lord Anwar Dace, either in the Idukantag in the Deep Roads while completing a Prince's Favor the first task, or in the Orzammar Diamond Quarter after saving Lord Dace during that quest. It requires a thieving score of 60 in the Deep Roads or 55 in the Diamond Quarter. In the base game, you can steal 2 copies of this from him, one from each area, but as with the Champion's Shield, Quinn's fixback resolves this issue and only allows you to steal 1 copy. This is a pretty good dagger, though it's quite low tier. It only has 1 rune slot, so it's not that useful in the late game. Moving on to gear stolen from locations. First up is the Ostagar camp, where you can steal items from the mage's chest if you obtain the key from the prisoner who stole it in the first place and got caught sneaking around camp at night. If you use the key at night during the prologue, you can get 2 gear pieces alongside a few consumables, a flask, and a bit of money. Apprentice Cowl is a cloth helmet that grants plus 5 mental resistance. It's pretty useless since very few enemy abilities require mental resistance checks. Enchanter's Arming Cap grants plus 1 willpower and plus 10 mental resistance, which is better because at least you get 5 mana from the willpower, and the mental res bonus is higher so it's somewhat significant, though still not very useful. As a special case, if you wait until the Return to Ostagar DLC to loot this chest, or have Dane's Fixes, which allows you to loot it again by not removing the key from your inventory when you loot it the first time, then you can also get another item from the chest. Corrupted Magister's Staff is a tier 5 physical mage staff which grants plus 5 spell power, plus 15% spirit damage, and has a 5% chance to paralyze on hit. This is actually a very solid staff among the ones you can get for free during the game, having a high spell power bonus and also a decent bonus to spirit damage. The chance to paralyze doesn't do super much since most of the time you'll be casting spells with your mage rather than auto-attacking, but it's nice to have. Next up is the Redcliffe Castle Vault, which you can break into during the Arl of Redcliffe quest. You can either get a key for the treasury by killing the undead chamberlain on the ground floor, or you can pick the lock. Picking the lock requires 60 cunning, 10 less for each point you invest in the Deft Hands tree on your lockpicking rogue. Either way, if you steal from the vault before advancing the quest, you can walk around the castle and hear the quartermaster and the servant talking about the fact that not much of the treasury remains. So because there is a mention of the consequences of your theft, I'm definitely counting this one as stealing. You can get 3 items with stats from here. Eamon's Shield is a tier 3 kite shield that grants plus 6 defense and plus 25 stamina. This is one of the best shields in the game, especially due to the extra stamina or mana, which is useful to a warrior or arcane warrior who wants to use a lot of abilities or spells. It's very easy to obtain this early too, so even if you replace it later with a higher tier shield, it's amazing for the first half of the game. You'll also find a Chevalier's Mace, a tier 3 mace with plus 5% cold resistance, minus 5% spirit resistance, and plus 2 cold damage, which you can also steal from Colgrim. It's much easier to obtain this than by stealing it from Colgrim, so even though the mace isn't great, it could at least be somewhat useful to you in the early game. The last item you are guaranteed to obtain from the vault is the Fox's Bow, a tier 6 short bow with plus 10 missile deflection. It's a pretty bad bow since it doesn't have any offensive bonuses, no rapid aim, no extra attack or crit chance, or anything that an archer usually wants on their weapon. So unfortunately, this one is really not good. Even if you're doing a challenge, I don't really recommend using it. The Crime Wave questline is the only quest in the game that specifically revolves around stealing from NPCs and picking locks. However, most of the things you steal as part of the subquests are just valuable items that get you a lot of money when sold to a merchant. But there are a couple of pieces of equipment that you can obtain. Coarse-cut gauntlets are tier 1 rogue restricted light gloves that grant plus 2% melee crit chance, and which are obtained during the Market Day subquest, found in one of the locked chests in the Dunram Market District, which you can open with a key you steal from Master Tover. These aren't anything special, but the crit chance bonus can be nice if you are focusing on a crit-based dual-wielding build. Exalted Maul is a tier 6 Maul with plus 2 willpower, plus 10 mental resistance, and plus 4 damage versus undead, which you can obtain during the Tears of Andraste subquest in Ban Franderol's estate in Denram. This one can be looted as part of the heist itself in the estate. Unfortunately, while the Maul would have been good earlier in the game when you still had undead to fight, by the time of the lands meet when this quest is available, you've already likely killed all the undead in the game. So the only good part of this weapon, the damage versus undead, is useless now. Still, it's a fun, unique item that can be obtained as part of this special questline, so I'm including it even if it's not that useful. If you would like to use this item and you're playing on PC, I highly recommend you add it to your inventory with console commands. If I were to suggest a more immersive edition, get it around the time you do the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest and reach the temple. The Maul is related to the Imperial Chantry, so you can say Andraste's disciples brought it from Tevinter to the temple long ago. Just a little roleplay option for those interested, so that it's not so much cheating as it is obtaining an item at a time when it's actually usable. It's bad item and quest design to place it so late in the game otherwise. Finally, as part of stealing from locations, I'll also mention the one origin story which surprisingly has you able to steal items from 2 places, the Circle Mage origin. Blackened Heartwood Staff is a tier 1 nature staff with plus 2 damage and plus 2 spell power that you can loot in the basement of the Circle Tower during the Mage origin. At the end of the quest, the first enchanter will ask you if you took anything of importance from the basement, and you need to have at least 1 rank of the coercion skill to be able to keep the staff, so in my opinion it is absolutely stolen since you're not allowed to take it and have to lie about it. Fade Striders are tier 1 mage boots that grant plus 1 magic, and Spirit Charm is an amulet granting plus 10% fire resistance. You can loot these from the storage caves as part of the Infested Storerooms side quest in the Mage origin. You can also loot a bunch of other generic items from the caves, and then have the option to tell Senior Enchanter Leora that you didn't actually care about killing the spiders and just wanted to loot stuff from the cave. So I would say that looting these boots and other items in the cave would count as stealing. The boots themselves are incredibly basic, though they are the only boots in the entire game that grant a bonus to magic, so there's that. The amulet is also very basic, but fire resistance is decent against a bunch of enemies like dragons, rage demons, mages using fire spells, and enemies using fire arrows or bolts, so it's not as useless as other elemental resistance amulets. These were all the gear pieces you can obtain in the vanilla game. As a bonus category, there's 2 items that are restored to be stolen by Quinn's Fix Pack, as well as a 3rd item that you could add to your inventory with console commands, because I haven't found any mod that makes it properly stealable. All of the items are tagged as stealable in the game's toolset, but unfortunately they were also incorrectly checked off as equipped by the NPCs in question, so that overrides the stealable tag, making them unobtainable in the vanilla game. Quinn's Fix Pack restores the first 2 by unequipping them. Nugbane is a tier 4 crossbow that grants plus 3 damage, and which can be stolen from the Mines Commander in the Orzammar Commons, near the entrance to the Deep Roads. This one is restored by Quinn's Fix Pack, though of course you could also add it with console commands on PC if you wanted to. This is a good crossbow, though in terms of damage, the Imperium crossbow you steal from the Merchant in Lothering is better. Of course, this one is lower tier, so it requires less strength to equip, so you could prefer having it for a lower strength character. Gregoire's Shield is a tier 4 heavy shield that grants plus 6 defense, plus 10% fire resistance, and plus 4% spell resistance. You can steal it from Knight Commander Gregoire in the Circle Tower, but only on PC if you have Quinn's Fix Pack. It's a decent shield, though I generally prefer Eamon's Shield due to the bonus stamina or mana. This one has higher base stats due to being a heavy shield as well as being higher tier, so it's a toss-up between them based on what your weapon and shield character needs more, better defensive stats or bonus stamina or mana. For these first 2 items, I can't tell you with 100% certainty what the required thieving score is, because these items aren't obtainable in the vanilla game. With Gregoire, the usual thieving score is 50 for the valuable item you can steal from him, so I'll assume it's the same for the shield. For the Mines Commander, it should be around 40 to 45 based on various people's experiences. Finally, Ring of Resistance is a ring that grants plus 1 willpower and plus 1 constitution, and which should be able to be stolen from First Enchanter Irving in the Circle Tower. However, it's improperly flagged as equipped just like the other 2 items in this section, so it can't be stolen in the vanilla game. As far as I could see, Quinn's Fix Pack doesn't restore this ring, and I also looked on Nexus mods everywhere for another mod that does and couldn't find any. So the only way I know of to obtain this in Origins is to use the console commands to add it to your inventory. If you do find a mod that restores this ring or just want to steal a valuable item from Irving, which could be an expert or master tier rune, then the thieving score required is 66. With this, we've reached the end of the list of gear pieces you can steal in Dragon Age Origins. There are, of course, other high-value items you can steal from NPCs and locations, particularly larger amounts of money from some characters, valuable items during the Crime Wave questline, and some higher-tier runes or other high-value items from a few, usually higher-rank NPCs. It's generally good practice to steal from anyone with a yellow or orange name. I really like the idea of being able to steal special items from various characters with a stealing skill, and I would have liked to see more interesting and unique items available for stealing, as well as more quests that added special interactions for you if you have the stealing skill. I know this is far more something you tend to see in Obsidian-style RPGs like the Outer Worlds 1 and 2, where your character's skills are very much the bedrock of your interactions with the world. But in Dragon Age, it does sometimes feel as if something is missing, and I think it's this. Some of the attributes, skills, and abilities aren't implemented in the game in a way that makes them feel significant enough. There's such a huge focus on combat and regular dialogue, so these other things are left to the wayside and end up feeling like a little bonus sprinkled on top, if you care to interact with them at all. If you've watched some of my Origins guides, you'll know I usually say stealing is a useless skill, because while yeah, you can get some extra items and money with it, it's just not something you strictly need to get through the game. I think the best use of stealing is in a roleplay heavy playthrough or a challenge run, because it makes for an interesting and fresh experience to add limitations that cause the items and money you receive from stealing to feel important. Of course, stealing might also help you out during a nightmare playthrough, just because you will have more resources to work with. That is, if you don't use any exploits for money or XP. I would hope you stay away from exploits because they ruin the fun of the game, but it's obviously up to you. Either way, I hope you found this list of the gear you can steal in Dragon Age Origins fun or interesting, and maybe it sparks an idea for a new playthrough for you. If you enjoyed this, stick around for future guides and discussion videos I plan to make about Dragon Age and other games I care about. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, or maybe become a channel member. Everything helps. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.